Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Judge Chat Yu-Gi-Oh podcast. Today I'm joined with...
Hi, it's Amani. Vibing.
Alright, so today we just figured we'd talk about, YCS Dortmund. It just concluded, I would say a few hours ago, but that feels wrong to say because it's more like, 8 or 9 hours ago.
That was only a few hours ago, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
So it concluded today, and
yes.
surprisingly enough, Rika takes yet another European event, so...
Somehow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what your thought about Rika is, but I think everyone's on the same page where we don't want to learn the hand trap lines, like where to interrupt them. So I'm just gonna start like side decking Ghost Reaper for the
God.
matchup.
Just to hit the sun seed, dude.
Yep, just to hit the dry ass.
I know enough about that matchup to know where to hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not super worried about it. Typically, from my experience, is you want to ash the dry ass, and if you have stuff like Baylor and Imperm, I think you're supposed to use that on the Jasmine.
Right.
Rika's always kind of had this weird sort of thing where the deck never feels on the one hand the deck just kind of has this thing where if you don't have access to low C, then you're basically just playing a bunch of 2 and 3 card combos that get super easily interrupted.
Yeah.
And then when you do have access to low C, you feel really strong and you can make these really insane boards. But
yeah.
I feel like part of the problem is that for this format, for this meta specifically, for Dortmund specifically, because of how wide open it was, it's hard to really gauge where the deck falls in that.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned access to Sun Sea Genus Loci, and I believe the first place deck list was actually playing Small World to bridge into it.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense. It's one of the only decks in the meta that lives or dies by seeing one card. Branded used to be that way, where it's if you didn't see a way to Branded Fusion, you were kind of just playing like a goat fusion deck essentially. So it makes sense why. And I was watching I think top 8 matches and upwards, so I think I saw his top 8 match, and then I saw his, or I saw some of the plant matches, and I think he bridged from Gamma Seal into Rika Petal into Loci, and then there's another one where he bridged from, I think it was Regulus into Lily Borea into Loci, which is it's crazy that he was willing to give up the Regulus negate and everything for the Loci, but it's you kind of have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
anyway, so looking at the top 64 deck breakdown, I have it here. There wasn't apparently, I didn't know this. Luca mentioned it to me literally before we started recording that Konami blog does not cover EU events, so that would explain why I couldn't find
you couldn't find it earlier.
Yeah, but they have it on Reddit. So the top 64, 16% was Tearlaments. It was the highest rated deck in top 64, or highest represented deck, I should say. Followed by Unchained at 14%. Dragon Link was a close third at 13%. Branded and Fluandries were both at 8%. Vanadium was at 5%, and 36% of the decks in the top 64 were other decks. I'm assuming this also includes variants. So with Branded, we might have had Chimera Branded and Pure Branded.
Well, typically those kind of get grouped in with with their respective piece of the pie chart.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if I can find the actual full breakdown.
Yeah, but while you're trying to find that, I guess we can talk about obviously the biggest surprise to me, and I feel like to a decent amount of people, was Tearlaments, just how many Tearlaments players there were. And I'm still maintaining my position that I do not think Tearlaments is a good deck. When you look at a deck that is 21 ofs, and you look me in the eyes and say this is a good deck, no, trust me, I have to question your sanity.
Yeah.
But
valid.
I mean, there's a
I
lot
don't
of
know.
people who are on about it. I mean, Hatch is a tier limit truther, and I just came back from a wedding, so I didn't get to play anything this weekend. But I stopped by at my locals, and there was I think two or three people playing tier limits. And I just had to ask why. And one of them literally just told me, "Oh, it's just a really fun deck to play." And it's like, okay, I accept that answer. That's the same answer I give people when I'm like playing Fluffles. You know, it's like, oh, it's my favorite deck. It's really fun to play. It's not good. But then when people look me in the eyes and say Tier Limit is the strongest deck you can be playing right now, that's when I just question whether or not they
So I
understand
think
the game.
first of all, we need to establish there's a difference between um a strong
Hmm.
deck and consistent deck.
Right.
I do think that when it comes to just raw power, Tearlament is the strongest deck that you could play right now.
Yeah.
When the tier deck is able to do its thing, it's just very hard to interact with. You have to keep in mind that this format isn't anything like when tier was like tier 0, or even just Pope format in general before that, where you can get away with main decking cards that just hate out tier.
Hmm.
Um, yes, there is some overlap between what hate outs tier and what hates out Unchained, but for the most part, a lot of those cards you don't want to be playing a critical mass of them because they hurt you in the long run.
Yeah.
So to offset that, you have to be playing. You have to find that balance between playing cards that are that can overlap across other matchups while also giving you an edge in this matchup. So cards like DD Crow, for example, are still very good. Are solid in the main deck because not only are they good against Unchained and Tyroments, but they do still have application against decks like Branded, Pearly, and even Labyrinth to an extent.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I was thinking about when you mentioned that is people are I think still on Druis Worm as a way to interact with the Unchained deck pretty well because the big thing is if you preemptively banish the Unchained Soul Lord Yama with a Druis Worm, if they out the Druis Worm, then you just get to out whatever they use to out your Druis Worm. And that was obviously they've found ways around it, mostly by summoning access code with the Druis Worm, because then you can chain block with the access code and make the chain unrespondable. But I think a lot of people are using DD Crow now because not only does it also do that, it also can preemptively hit out the Yama so you don't get the recursion. But it also is pretty good against Purely. You can hit. I forget what you hit out of the deck, but out of the graveyard. But I know I think it's one of the spells or something. But yeah, you
yeah,
hit something with Purely.
when they Perlily target something like the
Yep.
spell engrave, you chain the DD Crow to banish it and it doesn't resolve.
Yep, that sounds right. Yep. And obviously, DD Crow, just graveyard interaction in general, is usually pretty good. Like in the format, not there's obviously only so much you can do, but I can
Mhm.
see lines where DD Crow would be good into Dragon Link or even into Manadium or Branded. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm, I
but
don't know.
yeah.
I think ultimately, the main issue that I think I was kind of talking about this before in another Discord group I'm in where people were just because me and Hatch, we have another friend who he was kind of saying a lot of the same things where it's the deck's very high roll and RNG basis and a third, but that's not really accurate when you consider the fact that a lot of the cards that tier limit plays are very redundant.
Hmm.
Like the tier monsters all just kind of do the same thing. They just
Yeah.
mill you cards. They put stuff in the graveyard. And you have and obviously you have Scream, which puts more cards in your graveyard. Solic gets you more monsters. Perlino gets you more monsters. All that. And so what ends up happening is a lot of the times it's very similar to kind of the lights the old Lightstorm decks, like the Minerva Lightstorm deck from 2016, where it was um individually your cards don't do anything, but what's happening is because you're milling so much and you're seeing so much of your deck, you're just going to start hitting a critical mass of cards that do a lot in tandem with each other. And
Yeah.
so what will end up happening is it's you're just milling so much, you are just going to be consistently hitting all of your all the cards you want to be milling. So it stops really being RNG and more just kind of a inevitably I will just get there. Um,
Yeah, and there is a lot of cool stuff, like because the tier limits cards are just so generic, right? Like there's a lot of cool things that they're doing now. Like obviously they've included the Shadal cards, right? They've included Shadal cards that like never saw play, like Hell Shadal. I believe that card very seldomly saw play in actual Shadal decks. I think they're side decking uh, Shadal fusions for going second.
yeah.
That way they can just dump like whatever they want to the grave whenever they want it. And then the cool thing that I saw, because I was watching before I started driving, was um, oh they got cards in the graveyard and they used them to fusion summon Destiny Hero Dangerous, and then I think they dumped
Hmm.
Malicious, and then Malicious for Malicious, and then you can overlay those for Beatrice. Now I thought it was even
Yeah.
more base because I thought they were going to summon DPE, and I was like, that would be really cool to summon DPE here. And theoretically they could because they King of the Swamp for Polly, but they didn't. They just overlaid for Beatrice, which is the lame but safe play. Um, and like I've always been of the camp that I think if you really are like wanting to hit more cards, like obviously Beatrice sends whatever you want, but I think doing Pilgrim Reaper instead, making Pilgrim Reaper and milling 5 would be uh, it would be funnier to me. It'd be funnier and maybe better, but usually not better. Because Pilgrim Reaper is like just a random common that says detached material. I think it might be both players mill 5 or both mill 4. Um, but either way,
Both players know 5.
yeah. And I think it's a cool card. I think it's a card that didn't see a lot of love, and I think it's one of those cards that I feel like inevitably like will find a place in a deck and be expensive. It's just like people prefer the guaranteed hits off of Beatrice and the fact that it's a quick effect, so you can do it on your turn and your opponent's, which I understand. But uh,
Yeah.
anyways, the
I was
tier
gonna
limit
say like
studs.
it's just hits on a soft spot.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Um, yeah.
It is, but yeah. So tier limits, very interesting that it saw as much representation as it did. I think it. I don't want to say petered out because that's not the right word. It made it to top 8. I believe. I believe there's one tier limits player in top 8. Second. So obviously we talked about Rika being the first place at Dortmund. Second place was Vanquish Soul, which people seem surprised about. I'm not
Yeah.
personally. Like obviously, like I play a lot against Hatch, and Hatch was one tricking Vanquish Soul there for a while. Vanquish Soul, like, and Hatch will back this up. It's like Vanquish Soul is essentially the new Sky Striker, and like that's why a
Mhm.
lot of people I felt like were drawn to it. Is not necessarily like the cards with the play style. People like the play style. People like how it works. But just like Sky Striker, it takes a really, really dedicated pilot to make it look good, and that's why when you like see like tier lists, they list Vanquish Soul so low is because there's not a lot of people who are willing to put in the reps with Vanquish Soul. Um, but when you do have a player that is willing to put in those reps and is willing to learn all the niche like micro interactions that the deck can produce, it's impressive and it's quite scary.
Yeah, I think Vanquish Soul is like fine.
Yeah.
um, I don't think I think Vanquish Soul just kind of has this thing where it's like I played against Vanquish Soul and like I never really feel like the Vanquish Soul cards themselves are like the thing I'm losing to.
Yeah.
Um, like I think Vanquish Soul's like real just advantage is the fact that a lot of its plays just revolve around like resolving Ryzen.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you just resolve Ryzen into Soul once, then like the rest of your hand just doesn't really matter. So you just kind of have to be whatever you want. Um, I think it being able to just like main deck cards like Tikaboo is probably the edge it gets
Yeah.
in a lot of matchups. Like Tikaboo is just like such a powerful blowout against like most decks right now that
Also,
that one card alone can just like let
yeah.
you snowball into like a lot of advantage.
Also, there's just the inevitability of being burned to death by heavy Borger. That's happened to me several times where I was just like
Yeah.
setting up floodgates, to prevent Hatch from attacking. I think I was playing Scareclaw at the time, so I was just setting up Reichart, and he couldn't attack me, but just every turn he just burned me a little bit more with Borger. And that's how we
Yeah.
won a lot of the games against the floodgates, and just that ability to kind of sort of interact from the hand with your opponent, uh, and not like interact like Ash Blossom or Valor, but interact with their life points from your hand is just kind of it just kind of gives the deck an extra layer of complexity. So
Yeah. I definitely think the deck's like solid.
yeah,
I do lean more towards the general consensus that the deck is like kind of just fine.
yeah,
Like I don't think the deck is like that like honestly just even good. like like unfortunately like I think the deck's always going like I think the deck's a solid pick for like a meta call. Like if you just need a deck that can just like main deck like 18 non-engine cards and still have a pretty consistent just like main engine, then that's the deck to go with. But I don't think it's the deck that you bring to an event to win the event. Like I
yeah,
think there's a difference between building a deck to top an event and building a deck to win an event. So
yeah.
like Rika is a deck that you like Rika is a deck that you play to win the event.
Mhm.
Because once you get to top cut with it, like variance is so much lower and the format is so much more narrow that at that point, like your good matchups really do shine through.
Yeah,
Unchained is another example where it's like Unchained once it got to like top cut, like last format when Kashtira was still a thing, like once it got to top cut because it has such a solid Kashtira matchup, it just like could convert much better once you got into top 32.
yeah,
Um,
and
that was an issue that Sky Striker did like always have, where Sky Striker, um, when Sky Striker was in Swiss, it would like struggle against like all these like random decks that just wasn't like built to counter. But like once it got into Top Cut, where it was like consistently playing against like all like where it was consistently playing against decks like Orcus and Salamander and stuff, where it did have solid matchup spread, then it actually just shone through.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, I won't sit here and say like Vanquish Soul is the best deck in the room. But I will sit here and say like if you want to play Vanquish Soul, I do not think it's a bad pick. But something you mentioned about Unchained, you know, as somebody who has been playing Unchained, like I'll be the first to admit I am not grinding this format super hard. I'm not going to like every single like OTS championship, going to regionals every weekend. No, I'm playing locals when I get the chance, and I'm watching high level Yu-Gi-Oh. In my opinion, as somebody who has been playing Unchained, I think since Kashtira Rise Heart was banned and Kashtira is like no longer really a deck, Unchained has like it will slowly relinquish its hold as like the number one deck, right? Because that was the best thing, was you got to just link away the Rise Heart or the A Rise Heart, and you got to plus off your opponent setting up one monster and just hoping that it's enough. But now that Purely is like the other big deck in the room, and it's being ruled correctly that the Unchained Soul of Rage cannot link with a Expurely Noir that is unaffected by activated effects. That loses a lot of potency.
That was the thing.
Yeah, that was the thing. That was one of the reasons, is because it was ruled incorrectly at a YCS that Unchained Soul of Rage, or the Unchained cards in general, can link with a Expurely Noir, because the thought process was, it says it's unaffected by the activated effects, but just like IP Masquerena, the effect isn't. It's not the effect to link with it; it's the resolving of the effect that links. But the problem is the Unchained cards target, whereas IP doesn't, and because it targets an unaffected monster as part of the effect, and that's an activated part of the effect, the targeting will not stick. Like it, and at the point of resolution, the Unchained cards can't determine what it's supposed to be linking with. That's like the long and the short explanation. But anyway, because of that, because Unchained doesn't have that just like almost guaranteed matchup into Kashtira, I think it will slowly fall off as the best deck in the room. And I mean, clearly it wasn't. It lost to, I believe it lost to Rika, and then it I think it was the third place deck. So obviously not bad, not a bad showing. But it the best deck didn't win. So, or what people claim to be the best deck. So I'm not sure we're going to see Unchained having that top spot anymore. Don't get me wrong. I think it will be a top contender. I think it will continue to be a top contender. It's just a really cool deck. Operates on a completely different axis. I think we will see it for the next few formats as just kind of like one of those decks that's just ever present, but I don't think it's going to be the top deck for much longer. But then there is the other deck that I want to talk about is Dragon Link. Actually, Dragon Link is in a very precarious position because it lost four copies of two of its best cards, and of course being Magnemite and Chaos Space. And Magnemite obviously gives the deck just more consistency in turns 4, 5, 6, whatever. And Chaos Space gives it really good starters and really good recursion, especially of your Link 1s that you don't have multiple copies of anymore, aka Striker Dragon. And I think that Dragon Link does this. It's in this really weird spot because you want to be like, people who are playing it is like, oh, we'll just play 40 cards instead of 44, because a lot of decks were playing, more more names. But now, because it's on 40 instead of above 40, they're seeing a lot more bricks. They're seeing cards like Boot Sector Launch in hand. They're seeing the driver more often. Like today, I was watching the top cut match of our locals, the first place match of our locals, and the Dragon Link players saw 2 Nibiru's and a driver in his hand. It's like that probably would not have happened before. So
I mean, to be fair, that's kind of his fault for still playing Gamma. Like,
yeah, but what's your thought on Dragon Link? I think Dragon Link is, I think it's just one of those decks that will never go away. Both because Konami loves dragons, and players love making big wombo combo Link boards.
Yeah, I think Dragon's like fine. I don't really think it's a bad pick for a deck. It's definitely one of those decks that it's definitely like Dragon as like a type is just always going to be good. So Dragon Link as a deck will always just find ways to adapt, I think. I definitely agree that like the consistency is probably the big issue. Like Chaos Space going to 1 definitely hurts a lot more than I think people are willing to admit. I definitely think it's still a deck that's just always going to be there, though, and like there's nothing you can really do about that.
Yeah. And then I guess we're just moving down the top 64 breakdown. I guess Fluanderies, a deck that I don't think really is surprising.
No.
Yeah,
no, that deck's terrible. I don't know why people are still playing. That deck's literal trash. I don't understand. Even when the deck was like quote unquote good, I never understood why people wanted to play that deck. That deck's bad. It's boring. It's not like it's not fun to play with. It's not fun to play against. Like I don't understand. And even like I understand the argument. Like Fluanderies is always just gonna be one of those decks where it's like as long as like the best deck's like a graveyard deck, it's always just a good meta call.
Yeah, anytime
like,
the graveyard is like necessary, or anytime the end board includes Link monsters, Fluanderies will be like a playable deck. And I think that's wise because like summoning M-Pen into Unchained essentially blanks everything. There's not a lot they can do except for set and escape, and then like normal summon a body, set the escape, and pass, and then just hope they don't have follow-up, which they will always have follow-up. So,
yeah.
But no, Fluanderies is really like unfortunate. Now, I will say when Tier Limits was the best deck in the room, like it was Tier 0 format, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was playing Fluanderies, and the reason I was playing is both because it was cheaper than Tier Limits, and I'm the type of person who will usually never play the best deck in the room, either because of spite or either because I don't want to be just one of those people who's like, oh, I'm playing this deck because it's the best, whatever reason it is. I usually don't play the best deck in the room, and so that's why I picked Fluanderies. And there was some very interesting lines of interaction with the Tier Limits deck. Specifically, there were new lines developed for double M-Pen setup, and a lot of people look at how the Flunder decks evolved or evolved, I should say. And it was
Mhm.
like, oh, you're playing a second Dreaming Town and a second Barrier statue, and that's it. But the way that the deck evolved around tier limits was very interesting, in my opinion at least. Where it's like we started doing double M pen plays because that way we could do some funny things. Like we could when they mill cards and they go like effect in the graveyard, we chain Dreaming Town, summon the barrier statue, and then that cuts off the effects. So they use the effects, and they can't like reuse them if they clear the barrier statue, and stuff like that. That being said, it was a dark time for me and Yu-Gi-Oh. I didn't enjoy playing Fluandries. I think I just enjoyed pissing the tier limit players off more than I would have
Yeah.
enjoyed playing tier limits. Um,
Um.
and then Manadium. Now, I don't. I only watched top 8 and up, or I guess I didn't watch them. I listened to them while I was driving because it was on. I didn't have any podcasts or anyone to call and talk to, so I listened to the commentators comment the matches, and Manadium wasn't part of that. And I don't know, Manadium just feels like it's in such a weird place in the meta, right? Where it's like everybody knows it's a deck, everybody understands what the deck can do. However, it's just not seeing. I don't want to say success, but it's just not. It doesn't feel like it's an actual threat. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I don't know. Like, and like people talk about Manadium like, oh, it's gonna be crazy. Like, it's basically like Baron and an Omni negate. It basically ends on Baron and Solemn Judgment, as like a minimum. Let alone the Dissipator, Crimson Dragon lines, and you can even do the King Calamity, the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity stuff,
Yeah.
which may or may not be legal for a while longer because everyone's like, oh, this is insane. You just get to turn skip. But turns out if you get to the turn skip, you probably already won the game in the first place. So it doesn't really matter if you actually do the turn skip. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I think Manadium is just like,
It's yet another deck that's just kind of like fine.
yeah, Manadium has this weird thing where it's just like it has a couple issues. One, it's bricky.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that where it's like when the Manadium deck bricks, like it bricks. Like, you have to like play really weird. I think Manadium also just has this thing where it's like I think Manadium has the same thing as like the Adventure Synchron deck, where it was like when the decks were first like being like shown off during like pre-release weekend and all that, like they felt really strong, but like I don't think people really understood like that these weren't meant to be like they were definitely like week one decks in my opinion. Um, and that's not like I know like I have a friend who plays Vanadium and he's really and the deck when he plays it like I've seen him play it and the deck just feels really strong. But I feel like when I watch it like people just try to convert it into like at a higher level it just feels whelming. Like it doesn't do well into like hand traps. Like the only hand traps if I feel like it does really well into is like um it's like impermanent Valor, but like even then you still need to open like a specific like combination of cards to really experience that. Um
Mm-hmm.
deck just feels fine. Like
Yeah.
like you said, deck just fine.
There's there's so many decks this format. It's an incredibly diverse format, and I don't know about you, but it kind of makes me miss the formats where things were a little bit more dominant. Things where like there was maybe not necessarily a tier 0 format, but deck building around 2 or 3 decks. I kind of miss those times. And it's such a weird balance, I'm sure, for the people at Konami, where it's like people don't want tier 0 formats, but they don't like super diverse formats like this. While fun in paper, usually not so much. Where it's like there's nothing that feels great to play, there's nothing that feels fun to play against, and it just kind of all divulges into one big like draw your deck and or draw your hand and slam it down on the table kind of thing. But maybe I'm just not enjoying this format. Maybe Age of Overlords will make things a little bit better. Speaking of which, doesn't it come out like necessarily soon, but like I want to say like within the next month, right?
Age of Overlords comes out in like 2 weeks, I thought.
Let's take a look.
Pow.
Yeah, it says it's supposed to be October 20th.
October 20th. Yes.
It's around my brother's birthday.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
Yeah, so
I haven't really looked too much at Age of Overlord yet.
yeah, the only thing I know about Age of Overlords is the horse cards. There is supposedly some new Vsauce and Vanadium cards, and then there's the new 2900 Zeus, which is a crazy card. That card is crazy. That will change a lot for several decks.
Yeah, so if you guys are listening to this podcast or watching the podcast, and you want to hear our thoughts about Age of Overlord, give us like a week to read all the cards from Age of Overlord. And then come back next episode, baby.
Oh man, I probably won't even. I probably wouldn't even do that. So I have a big problem. Yeah, I have a big problem with new sets, right? And this is just a problem with me. I refuse to read any cards before they're actually released, right?
Oh, same. No, same.
Like I don't know why. It's like people could say like, oh, there's new Fluffle support. And it's like Fluffle's my favorite deck, like in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And they could tell me there's new Fluffle support, and I would not read it until the card's in my hand. So I don't know. Like we can definitely read the Age of Overlord cards, but the only one that I really care about is the new Zeus. Mostly because it's a fiend, so it actually has a lot of synergy in Unchained, because you can do all your like Unchained stuff, right? And then you can just like, if you leave like a Reke or like I don't know, but you can leave like something on the board and just summon it, right? It's kind of cool. You can kind of do some fun stuff like that. And because it's a fiend, obviously you play under the fiend locks. You can do stuff in Labyrinth with it, and it is just a really strong card to throw in every deck. It is more generic than Zeus, which is insane to say considering Zeus just ranks up on any XEs. So, but yeah. So. I guess the other thing is the Jack Atlas structure deck that released recently. We didn't make an episode between. We haven't talked about that since the last episode of the podcast. So, I guess, do you have any thoughts on the Jack Atlas structure deck? I mean, I looked at the reprints and I'm like, hey, Danger Nessie finally has a common printing.
Let's go. That'd be a lot cooler if it didn't just get a secret reprint. Yeah. I did like skim them. They seem good. I think the problem I think that's just another deck that kind of suffers from the. It suffers from the same issue that like some of the other kind of like tier 3 combo decks have, where it's just like when it does the thing really good, but if it gets like interrupted once or twice, then it doesn't really do anything. It just gets left. You just get left with like these cards that are just kind of whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
deck just doesn't seem that good.
Yeah, I mean, I did a tier list for the current meta, and people were asking me like, oh, why isn't Resonators, why isn't Red Dragon Archfiend on here? And I just honestly told them I think it's just worse Adventure Synchron.
Yeah, because it is. Let's be honest. Like, like we could sit here and lie and be like, that's pretty good, but no.
No, I mean, I think the biggest difference is Adventure Synchron is like 2 to 3 card combos minimum, whereas the Resonators can do like 1.5 card combos. So like in theory it's better, but you really can't do a lot with just the 3 structure decks. And like by the time you get like all the cards that are actually good enough to make it like solid, you might as well just play the Adventure Synchron pile decks that are not doing anything. I don't think I've seen anything besides like the YouTube combo videos, like trying to convince people that Reborn Tengu is like the best card in 2023. I mean, to be fair, Reborn Tengu like does a lot in that deck, right? Normal Reborn Tengu, and then you can Rev Synchron it away, Rev Synchron it away for AFD, and then you get another Reborn Tengu. You get AFD effect. You can summon it back. You can summon the Rev Synchron back. It makes a lot of sense, but it's just hilariously weird. It's like, do we really want to brick on multiple Reborn Tengus in the year of our Lord 2023? I don't think
Yes.
so.
I do.
Yes, they
Sounds
say.
fun.
Yeah.
They hated Jesus for he spoke the truth.
Yeah, like, and the funny thing is, like, apart from the Revolution Synchrons, which are only like $30-$40 now, which is crazy. Duelist Nexus has like nothing of value anymore except for the ultras. Like, I think the most valuable cards are in order: Revolution Synchron, excluding Starlights, of course. Revolution Synchron. Then it is like the Chimera Ultra, and then it's Unchained Soul Lord Yama. The fact that two ultras are more expensive than all but one of the secrets is hilarious. Anyways, it's like I have, other than exactly Revolution Synchron, I think I have most of that deck. I have most of the Adventure Synchron pile deck. But like, I'm not about to play it. I could sell it to somebody if they wanted it, but I'm not about to play it. Like, even today, like, I finally pulled a second Rite of Aramasir from 25th anniversary Megaton.
Oh wow!
The tin was ass though. My promo was Black Rose, which is good. It's nice for Edison to have a quarter century secret Black Rose.
Yeah.
And then the only secrets of worth note were the Rite of Aramasir. I pulled 2 Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castle. So it was the good one, but those are like $1.50. And then I pulled an Ultra Rare Dark the Dark Tremor Gloomy, which is a cool card that doesn't see hardly any play anymore.
Which makes me sad.
Yeah, that's a really cool card. I mean, it might see more play now. I mean, if it wasn't a spellcaster, you could probably do some fun stuff with the Unchained matchup, but it's a spellcaster.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's about the state of the game right now. I'm excited for Age of Overlord to come and shake things up. Hopefully, I mean, Age of Overlord is probably gonna be a really expensive set, from what I can tell. But it'll probably change a couple things up.
Hopefully, at least. I don't know. I think Age of Overlord. Yeah, like you said, for like little bits I've gleaned from it, there's definitely some. It definitely looks like there's some solid stuff in there. I just think the way that the format kind of just is right now, it's not really like. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah. Didn't we? Well, no, we knew about that. We knew about the Fire King structure deck. I'm looking through like all the to be released products, and the Fire King structure deck is here, and I'm like, what's going on with that? But no, there's a lot of things that we're waiting to come out or waiting for news on.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a good thing, but it's a thing.
Yeah, like, oh god, I think they delayed that even further. Shit. Battles of Legend Chapter 1 got delayed to February 2024. Well, I don't know if it's got delayed, but that's when the release date will be, which kind of sucks because that is going to have a lot of good reprints for Edison format, for HAD format, for current format. So it sucks that's another like 4 months away, 4 or 5 months away.
Yeah, it happens, right? Like, product gets delayed for reasons beyond our understanding.
I mean, Bumboy gets delayed. Garbage Lords is on time.
Well, listen.
I'll be honest. It's probably going to be delayed here because so normally we record our episodes on Tuesday. It's Sunday night. I haven't even done my polls, and I just straight up told Zach, like, I'm sorry, but just because of my brother's wedding this weekend, I don't think I'm going to be able to record on Tuesday. We might record later this week, so we'll stick on time. But luckily we stay at an episode ahead, so we're still good. There'll still be an episode this week, but next week might not come out on Friday. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Bumboy's progression is. I've done my polls. I just haven't built anything yet.
I don't even remember what I took as my my like prize card for having
Oh
the
yeah, you
space
did
deck.
win that.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if we're being honest, I think I just took a Black Horn of Heaven because I was like, it's just a good.
I remember we were talking. I remember we were talking about that. Like we were both talking about like what we would pull. I think we both just kind of came to the consensus that like Blackhorn is just like the most generically good one here.
Yeah,
Like,
and I remember like some people were talking about some of the chain cards. Like there's one like of the like if you reach a chain link 3 or higher, draw a card. Um, like there's one card like that, and I mean I thought about picking up a Lightning Punisher just because that was one of my favorite cards growing up. Not because it was good, but just because the artwork was sick as hell.
yeah.
It looked like honestly, it looked like something straight out of Naruto. So like 6, 7, 8 year old Immortal was really fucking stoked to see a card that was just like the Chidori.
I'm like looking at my pulls from before. Apparently, I got two. Cyber Ogre 2s, which was an ultra rare, and I got an ulti Cyber Dark Edge, and that's the only Cyber Dark I have. Unfortunate, but yeah.
God, remember the Cyberdark structure deck? That thing was hilariously bad.
Oh, you mean the Imperm structure deck? Yeah.
Yeah, the you know, all right, this could be our last segment of the podcast before we conclude it. But what's
Sure.
I mean, obviously we all have like our favorite decks. Like I would love a Fluffle structure deck, but objectively, like what's an archetype or just something that you feel like needs a little bit more love than it actually has.
It's a deck that needs more. Oh God,
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like like I said, like obviously Fluffle's my favorite deck, so that would be like my go-to of like what if I could choose any archetype to have a structure deck, is be like Fluffles. But
I would personally want to see a Burning Abyss structure deck. I'm surprised they
a
haven't done
BA
that yet.
structure deck would be crazy good. I mean, yeah, because they did this shit all structure deck.
I wish there was a timeline where like they did the BA structure deck at the same time as the Shit All structure deck.
That would be really cool. That would have been
Remember,
insane.
there was for those of you who who are not as old as me, you may not remember this, but there was a time back in the olden days where when Konami would do like when Konami would release structure decks in pairs, and like the idea is that they were kind of like sort of
opposites,
themed as like sort of opposites to each other. So you had like
I think the first one was the dragon and the zombie structure decks, right?
yeah, so you had like dragons and zombies. You had like fire, water, earth, wind.
Yeah.
It was a really cool concept because it was basically just like it's just kind of like choose like pick your preference thing. Usually one structure deck was better than the other.
I mean, yeah, the definite advantage from like my perspective, like as a kid, was when we went to like Walmart or Target or wherever to buy the cards, right? We saw the two different structure decks. So both my brother picked one, I got to pick the other one. And like friends could do that, stuff like that. So the fact that it's all just one it is kind of lame. That you don't have that. But the 2-player structure deck is coming out, so that'll change that. That'll be very cool. Hopefully that
like,
product sells really well because that'd be cool.
Starter showdown thing, right?
Yeah, it's Visas and Zeus. Those are like the only two cards we know, and it's like hopefully that product does really well because some more like that wouldn't be bad. Oh gosh, this might be just some like rose-colored glasses after the insect deck profile that I did on my channel last week. But I think Insectors, I feel like a structure deck, like just a couple structure deck cards could put that right back into top contention. I think that would be pretty cool to see because I know there's definitely a lot of people, like after seeing how many views that episode got, that deck profile got, it's like there's clearly a lot of people who love Insectors. So I think that fan base would be very happy to get a structure deck. Anything else?
I think Insectors just like a cool deck.
Yeah. Oh, you know
that's
what
I say about it.
Well, I guess they have had structure decks before, but it's been a while since we've had a hero structure deck. Because the last one was the contrast heroes. When was that? Yeah, Heroes Strike in 2015. That was the last time.
So the only reason I don't want to see another hero structure deck is
just
last time we had a hero structure deck, we got Dark Law. So
yeah, that's fair. Heroes don't need more support.
I'm good. Yeah, like I really wish they would have done the I'm mad that they skipped over the Chaos Dragon revamp structure deck as well as, and they also skipped over like the Atlantean revamp structure deck. I think both of those would be really cool, but
Yeah.
Whatever.
There's the Light Sworn structure deck. There was the Pendulum structure decks were gross. Did not like those. Um,
Speaking of pendulums, shout out to OCG for releasing Magic Spectre support and then not unbanning Cure.
not unbanning Kieran. To be
so,
fair, yeah. I
that's
mean,
so based.
yeah. I mean, I've talked about Kieran a number of times where it's just like I don't think it's bad enough to keep on the list, or like it's good enough to keep on the list. Like when you look at it, like the protection effect is nice, but what people are like really afraid of is the like pop effect, and it's just a worse Fenrir. It's just a Fenrir that's only on your turn and destroys. So
It bounces.
oh, it bounces. Okay, so it doesn't proc floating effects, but
No.
it's only once per turn. Whereas Fenrir, you can attack and use it on your turn, and then you can use it on your opponent's turn. So I think it can come back.
For context, for those that have managed to go their lives thus far without ever reading Kieran, because you just got into the game like recently. Magic's Kieran, what made that card so strong is the fact that so it was like at the time that like pendulums came out, like it was literally just like a soft once per turn, like not soft, a hard once per turn, like bounce a guy that could bounce your opponent's stuff and then bounce your own stuff. So it was really cool because you could like use it to like recycle resources. It just outed like annoying monsters. And the fact that it couldn't be targeted or destroyed by card effects meant that like you had to specifically summon a monster. But if you're able to get far enough to summon a monster that could theoretically beat over Unicorn, they could just bounce it with Unicorn. I think you can't really appreciate how disgusting Kieran is until you've seen someone go like Kieran. Until you've seen someone go like, all right, pendulum summon out like normal summon Buku, search Kieran, scale, pendulum out like pen sorcerer. They summon out like a pen sorcerer, the Kieran, and like another 4, or like another guy. Pop their 2 scales, get the perform repel, draw 2 combo, and then on the opponent's turn, bounce back the pendulum sorcerer. Next turn, pen summon the pendulum sorcerer and just do it again. Like you can,
Yeah, that's
just a thing you could just do. Like you could do that. Like there was just a lot of like weird things you could do with Kieran. But even at its worst, the fact that it was just quick effect, like bounce an opponent's guy, bounce back a card that you could just like keep using to accumulate resources was just really good.
yeah. And you mentioned that, and I was like thinking, what would be a cool pendulum deck to get support? And it's like, well, you can't give Performance Pals anything because they will break it. And I was like, what would be pretty cool? I think Dino Mist is like a very cool archetype.
Dynamis is
that just like everybody loved it because it was such low rarity. Like it was one of the low rarity archetypes of its time. And obviously, it does some really cool things because they're all machines, so you can do like infinity plays. You can make Cyber Dragon Infinity. But other than that, the deck doesn't really have a great game plan other than just tributing your own monsters and trying to push for lethal. So maybe there's be something they can do with Dynamis. But it was always like even as a much newer player, when I saw the Dynamis cards, like they're like dinosaurs but steam engines. That's like kind of cool. So.
Yeah.
For reference, the first structure decks that I opened were the Ice Barrier structure decks. But after that, I upgraded to the Machina structure decks.
Nice.
Because the Ice Barrier structure decks were not good. They're really not good.
Ice Barrier structure decks were really mid.
And it's funny because some of the cards from the Ice Barrier structure decks are going up in price because of the new Ice Barrier support.
Yeah. Which I don't know. I think that's just more cope.
It is. There's a lot of cope right now. Everybody is just like tired of the format, so everyone's just looking forward.
No, I think Ice Barriers is genuinely just one of those decks. At least like from people like friends I've talked to, like Ice Barriers is just a deck that people just really like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I know I have a few friends who are like genuinely really excited for those cards. I don't really understand why, because I don't know. Maybe I just need to like read them again.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the idiot, but I mean,
in theory, they have they're set up to do a lot, right? Because Medallion of the Ice Barrier has it's a non once per turn restricted rota, so you can search any Ice Barrier card. And then they have some interesting spells and traps. They have some kind of interesting monsters that, like reborn themselves, or, when they go to the graveyard, they summon a token, stuff like that. It's like they have like the potential. The problem is they all just suck. like,
Unfortunate.
like, there's not really a payoff. Like, the payoff to like just a pure ice barrier deck was like, oh, you make Trishula 0 and you hand loop your opponent a bit, and then when it dies, you make normal Trish and you hand loop them a little bit more. It's like, okay, this isn't actually that good. And they took away a lot of like the good facts of the ice barrier, like of like the extract monsters, right? They nerfed Duloran, they nerfed Brionac. I don't think, did they nerf Gungnir? I feel like they did. They might
No.
not have. Anyway, so they totally like neutered so many of the different like extra deck monsters that were staples of their time. Like even Edison, like the one Brionac comes up so fucking often. But ice barriers be ice barrier, and So, anyways, I guess we'll go ahead and we can call the episode there. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like, and if you really enjoyed, be sure to subscribe. Luca, where can they find you if they want to?
You can find me on twitter.com/mihoyaboy. You can also find me on twitch.tv/mihoyaboy. I feel like every episode I say that I'm going to start streaming next week.
I was going to ask.
I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm not going to start streaming next week.
Yeah, I think I've officially streamed more than you now, because I've done like 4 or 5 streams on YouTube.
My plan is to, because I'm working on getting, I'm in the process of like finalizing a new apartment.
Okay.
So I plan on just like waiting until like we've moved in. We've kind of like settled in for like a week or so before I start. So probably like early November is when I'm actually gonna like officially start.
That's fair. That's what I did. I just new apartment meant new computer, so it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyways, thanks for watching, everybody.